It's our journey to know that's taken us from those very humble beginnings.
It continues to point to a gene-environment
I
interaction.
distinctly remember sitting there thinking, my daughter couldn't read on Monday, and now she can read.
So I'm hosting my own reading challenge.
Formula that we recommend based on the research.
And we called it Lindamood-Bell Learning Processes.
Welcome to the Lindamood-Bell Radio Podcast, where we explore topics in literacy and learning. I'm Dave Hungerford for Lindamood-Bell. Thanks for listening. Hi, today my guest is Robert Cardiff from the San Diego area. He's going to talk about his experience from first grade and beyond, and also a little bit about the Lindamood-Bell Foundation. The Lindamood-Bell Foundation seeks to provide life-changing learning to individuals of all ages. The Foundation provides scholarships to attend the Lindamood-Bell Learning Center or the Lindamood-Bell Academy and funds research initiatives. Here's Robert.
Yeah, so my name is Robert Cardiff. I grew up in Palm Springs, California. I'm 30 years old, and I work for a company called App Dynamics now. It's a smaller company to Cisco Systems, which is one of the largest companies in the world. And I'm in sales. I'm an account executive.
Oh, great. And so we've talked over the phone several times here, and I've learned a little about your story. And this is not a recent story. You ran across Lindamood-Bell a long time ago, and early in your academic start. So how did your academic career start?
Yeah, so it's definitely a tough start, I would say. I think it's a story that a lot of kids go up against. I think for me, I was really lucky to have parents that were looking for answers, how to help me. But it all started when I was in first grade, and I couldn't read. I didn't know the ABCs. I really just didn't know how to comprehend. And so you put me in a classroom with a bunch of regular kids, very quickly I started struggling. And that's when the public school system started noticing that I had a learning disability.
Did you recall, I don't know if you recall, but did you have a lot of books at home, and did your parents read to you? Do you have siblings that read with you at all or anything like that?
Yeah, interesting. So my sister was a phenomenal reader. She's a couple years older than me, and her name's Lauren. And she was top of her class and never had any problems, learning the ABCs or reading and writing. And so for me, my parents did everything they could to kind of get me to the same level. I mean, it was to the point where they would read to me. I had tutors. In first grade, I was in what they call remedial classes. And so to answer your question, my parents did everything they knew how to do, but they just didn't know where to go. And I remember it so vividly, like it was yesterday. They called my parents into the school, and I was first grade, and they said, "Your son will never be, where his peers are. He'll always be in special ed." And I was sitting in the other room, and my dad came storming out of that room. I could kind of hear it through the walls, and he came storming out of that room, and he, said some words that I shouldn't say as a little kid. And he said, my kid will not always struggle with learning. And my mom felt the very same way. And within a couple weeks, I was no longer in that school. I was in a private school, a very small private school, and I ended up having to, repeat the first grade.
It didn't sound like the public school had much confidence in their own teaching ability either. If at first grade they're going to write you off already.
Yeah, I think it's one of those challenges. I definitely don't fault the public school system, because they really do their best. And having to manage kids with learning disabilities and kids that are able to learn at the pace that requires them in order to progress to the next grade. And so for that, reason, a lot of kids get stuck in that situation. And what happens, and what I'm so passionate about, is that when a kid at that age doesn't know why he's not where he's supposed to be, he gets put into a program that makes him feel lesser than the people that he's surrounded with. And if that child isn't able to get help, then there's potential for that child to be have that mindset for the rest of their life. And that's a really, really sad thought. And that's where my parents had the willingness and thankfully the means to be able to continue to fight for me to be the person I am today.
And so you went to the private school for you repeated first grade, then what happened?
Yeah, so I started going into the first grade again, and that following summer, so I'd finished the first grade, I was still having problems. My family took a trip to a lake, and my family doesn't do lake trips, they don't do camping. It's just not something that we were raised doing. And so it was kind of a weird situation. I mean, we got a motorhome, we went up with a bunch of my parents' friends, and we went to this lake. And it got to the point where we were literally leaving early because it just didn't suit my mom and my dad. There was no hookups and there was no water, and it was just like a big mess, right? You can imagine. And right before we were about to leave, there was a woman that asked my mom about our family, and they got on the subject of me and my learning disability. And that lady, coincidentally, was somebody that worked at Lindamood-Bell. And she said, your son doesn't have a problem, he just needs a little bit of extra help. And the school that I teach at, they focus on children with that need a little extra help, like your son. And so within a week of us getting back from that camping trip, I was being tested at Lindamood-Bell, and I was enrolled the next week.
And we're here sitting in the place that you were enrolled.
Yeah.
A decade, 15, how many years ago?
Yeah, 20 years later, we're sitting in the same building in San Diego that my parents dropped everything and were able to put me through.
And so, do you remember coming? You must remember coming to this. You have a remarkable memory, by the way.
Well, I mean, it's firmly stamped in my mind when I was told that I would always be in special ed, and I was talking to my mother today, knowing that I was going to come talk to you, and she said I was a first grader asking, when I was getting held back, Mom, if I ever get to where I'm supposed to be, can I skip a grade and go back to where I was? And she said yes, probably thinking that was never ever gonna happen, right? I mean, you got this 7-8-year-old asking if they can skip a grade. I mean, I think one of the things that I think about a lot is like when you're a kid that age and you don't have any hope, and I think that's the saddest part, is not having any hope, because very quickly you have to grow up, and you have to start, figuring out how to get by.
And schools have gotten even more competitive in that period of time.
Yep.
Imagine all the kids that are out there, that same hopelessness. It's unfortunate. So tell me about your experience here. When you came to Lindamood-Bell, what do you recall?
It's a long time ago.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember these little tiny details, but I came here, the incentive, my parents incentivized me by buying me a cookie every day. And so
I'm shocked at that kind of bribery.
At midway through the day, the thing I looked forward to most was getting a cookie. But I was wondering as a kid, why am I spending my summer, a month out of my summer, going to schooling when everybody else is out playing? And so I remember, the one thing I looked forward to each day was getting a cookie. But what I would do is I would spend a half day here. My family, moved here for a month out of the summer. We stayed at a little bed and breakfast, and each day I would come here.
They didn't camp?
No, we did not camp at all. We definitely didn't camp. But my dad and mom have a business, and so my dad would drive back and forth to Palm Springs. And so it was kind of a weird situation. But I remember coming here, and the people at Lindamood-Bell care so much about the students. And what's really special is I previously was in a classroom full of a bunch of kids, not paying attention because I didn't understand. And now I came to Lindamood-Bell, and there's one-on-one teacher to student training. And what I remember back then is they were very encouraging. And it wasn't that I had a learning disability or I was dumb. It was that, Robert, you learn, a certain way. Those are the patterns you have. And most children learn the other way. And so what they taught me at Lindamood-Bell is how do I learn like the rest of the kids, so that when I get put back into school, I'm able to comprehend similar to how they comprehend, right? And so going back to like my experience here, I remember the teachers at Lindamood-Bell being really sweet to me, encouraging, explaining the why am I here, what am I doing, and making me feel that I just need a little bit extra help to make sure I get to where I need to be.
Was it mainly in the comprehension side of things that you worked on, do you recall? It was like...
Yeah, so when I came in here, I only knew 3 words, and those were from memory. I didn't actually know how to write them or spell them. I knew how to write my name, but that was about it. And I didn't know the alphabet. I didn't know how to read. And so initially they had to teach me, what the alphabet was, what, different vowels. And then from there, they, once I knew that, then I started learning words. And by the end of my time here, my vocabulary was, nowhere near the level. It was way up here, right? And then, so it was recommended to my parents that next summer for me to come back here for another couple weeks. And so I did that again, and I think I remember that a little bit less than my first time around. So I came back here and went through the same progression, and so then by that time I was in the 3rd grade. By the time I was finished with 4th grade, I had like some of the highest standardized testing in the state of California. I was in a GATE program, and I was at the top of that GATE program. And so the teacher at the time, his name was Mr. Locker, and I know him. I mean, I remember every part of his face, everything. He called my parents into the classroom, and at this time I was going to a public school again. It's called Cardiff Elementary. It's in Palm Desert. And Mr. Locker told my parents that I was the #1 person in the class. And I had some of the highest testing in the state of California, and I was top of my GATE program. And my mom started crying, and
Because 2 years earlier, you knew about 3 words that you could manipulate.
3 years earlier, I couldn't even read.
Wow.
And when I got out of that second summer at Lindamood-Bell, Lindamood-Bell basically said, your son is right where he needs to be, which is pretty amazing, And so going back to that promise my mom made me back when I was in 1st grade, the first thing my mom asked this teacher, Mr. Locker, was, can Robert skip 5th grade? And he said, absolutely. He said, as long as he can handle socially, being in 6th grade and skipping a grade, then I have full confidence that Robert will do well academically. And so, I mean, that was a dream come true for me. And I think what's really amazing about, kind of my story and what I'm so grateful for, is that it just didn't stop there. I was a honor roll student, 4.0 student from 6th grade until I graduated. And, fast forward a little bit, I now have a master's in business. And I work at one of the fastest growing software companies in the world. And I'm 30 years old, So I would say, I'm super blessed. And my parents, never gave up on me. And I think what I'm super, super grateful for is that they had the means to pay for me to go to Lindamood-Bell. Because it's not cheap to have somebody spend hours a day with you one-on-one, and so for those parents that have the money, it's worth every penny. And for the parents that don't have the money, there's other ways to get funding for your kid, and it changed my life,
And I when I first heard of your story, I relayed this with you already, that it was really shocking that you've attributed and remember, and that change of 20 years ago is so meaningful to you now. And just wondering how that motivated you to, I think this will talk about kind of what you're doing now and your plan is for the next few months. Do you ever reflect on that and think like how is, that impetus of the change, why that stands out so strongly for you?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think there was a fork in the road, and that fork in the road, I could have either been in remedial classes the rest of my life and kind of, tried to push the boulder uphill the rest of my, education, or I was lucky enough to get the help that I got. And kind of what that instilled in me is that, one, you got to work hard. Two, that if you work hard, good things will happen. And that just because somebody tells you one thing doesn't mean that that's a closed door, And what I think is really unique about my parents is that going back to when my dad, came screaming out of that classroom saying, my kid's not going to be in special ed the rest of his life. And so for me as a kid that got the opportunity to come to Lindamood-Bell, and fast forward to today, like there's nothing I can't do. I feel like I'm just getting started at 30 years old, and I have a position of gratitude for everything I've been given. And now I'm sitting, at Lindamood-Bell. It's like the best feeling in the world. And so my goal over the next, next 30 years is to try to help as many kids that maybe have parents that are willing but that don't have the funds because of, what I was given. And so, I want to raise money, I want to help kids, I want to motivate kids, because it had such a big impact on my life.
Well, I'd like to take a moment now in this podcast to allow everybody that worked at Lindamood-Bell that hears it to go get some tissues. You're going to have an effect on them, I can guarantee you that.
Yeah. One of the things I'm very passionate about is what I just mentioned is there's a lot of kids that, they may get tested by Lindamood-Bell and then the parents find out that it's just not in our budget, and so those kids are potentially going to be in those remedial classes for the rest of their life, right? So when I got old enough to understand that, everything I'd been given and the opportunity I'd been given, I always thought like, wow, one day I'm going to have a nonprofit. I'm going to, raise a bunch of money, and I'm going to go to different schools and be able to just give back what I've been given. And so when I started work for the company that I work for now, which is a company called Cisco Systems. They have this amazing nonprofit matching program. And so I always thought, maybe when I'm 50, 60 years old, when I've done well in my career, I can, give back then. Well, being a part of the company that I'm with now, they really motivated me to start looking at, maybe doing the nonprofit now, right? And so that's when I reached back out to Lindamood-Bell and said, hey, here's my vision. I want to, raise a bunch of money to help kids that their parents, don't have the means to send their kids to Lindamood-Bell. And Lindamood-Bell, funny enough, had a nonprofit arm of their organization specifically set up to help the parents that don't have the means.
And just getting started.
And it's just getting started as a couple months ago. And so, instantly, biggest smile on my face. I'm like, don't have to wait till I'm 60 years old. I'm 30 years old, and I got this great company that, spends a lot of money to support nonprofits. And so I'm currently in the process of getting Lindamood-Bell, nonprofit organization approved by the company that I work for. And, my goal over the next 4 months, by the end of the year is to raise $20,000. And I truly believe it's going to be a lifelong journey because of the passion that I have, the gratitude I have to help, children in situations, that I was confronted with. And so to do all that and what I'm planning to do is I'm running a marathon. It's December 7th. It's in Death Valley. So not as bad as you think, but my goal...
It is the winter.
Yeah, it's going to be winter, so it's not going to be too bad. But over the next 4 months, I'm training and really trying to get the word out there about raising $20,000 for Lindamood-Bell's nonprofit organization. And that is specifically going to go back to the children that get tested that Lindamood-Bell determines that they can help. And hopefully that money, is going to be leveraged and to change people's lives.
So you told me something a while back that was kind of driving you as well.
Yeah.
What was that?
An attitude of gratitude, as corny as it sounds, is such a powerful thing. And I think above all else, my biggest feeling is being grateful for the opportunity that I've had to be a part of Lindamood-Bell. And I carry that with me every single day. Being grateful for finding the lady that worked at Lindamood-Bell, to my parents being willing to drop everything and move me here, to being grateful that I remember where I was and where I am now. And that all is about being grateful. And the power of being grateful can move mountains.
Gosh. If there were so many more people that thought like that. So we have a lot of parents that come in and they get tested and they do see that it's a commitment of time, money, energy, and sometimes moving. What would you say to a parent that feels like, yeah, this seems like it would be a good approach? I worry, is it worth our commitment? Is it something that's going to be sustainable and not just at the end of the summer they do really well on some tests, but then during the school year it kind of just fades again? What would you say to somebody about that?
Yeah, I think it's always, really understanding, I put this time and this money into this program for my child, what's the outcome? And I think so often you have, children that go through the program and their lives are changed, but, 20 years later, they're in the full swing of their life and, they don't get the opportunity to come back and tell their story. And so the one thing that I would, really, really want to lean on is to tell parents that, when I was 7, 8 years old going to Lindamood-Bell, I had no idea if it was going to help me or not going to help me. I didn't even, initially know why I was here. But, now 30 years later, I'm married to the woman of my dreams. I am so grateful for everything I've been given. I'm excited about, the future of my life. I'm accomplished in education, and I'm successful. And that wouldn't have happened without my parents investing the time and money for me to go to Lindamood-Bell. And I think that's the thing that I'd like to leave every parent that is considering their child to go to Lindamood-Bell. And the other piece is, if you're going to invest the time, and if you have the money, or you have Lindamood-Bell nonprofit help, the parents need to encourage their kid every single day and tell them why they're here. That Lindamood-Bell is going to help you be successful in your life, and that that kid needs to work hard and believe in the process, and really good things are going to happen.
And once you start seeing even if it's incremental, start seeing the gains, that can really be a snowball of momentum that can help move kids forward. I've seen it a million times.
Yep. Instead of pushing the boulder uphill, it's a snowball going downhill.
It's a lot easier.
And so it totally changes the equation. I mean, within 3 years, it changed my life. So pretty amazing.
And I don't know if it works that way if it's a metaphor for your marathon, but if you're like running down the mountain as opposed to running up, it's a lot easier too.
Oh my God, yeah.
Other than on your quads.
If I could run downhill the whole time, my time would be a little better.
You can see a short video profiling Robert at the Lindamood-Bell Learning Processes YouTube page, or on our website, lindamoodbell.com. You can also reach the Lindamood-Bell Foundation at lindamoodbellfoundation.org. And I want to thank you for listening to the Lindamood-Bell Radio Podcast. If you like what you've heard, rate us and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow Lindamood-Bell on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. We are Lindamood-Bell Learning Processes.